Standing for a second term in 1980, this peanut farmer from Georgia was facing Republican Ronald Reagan. The stakes were high. Trouble was brewing in Iran. Its ruler, the Shah, was backed by America, but he was ousted by the followers of Ayatollah Khomeini in 1979. Anti-American sentiments ran high. In November, Iranian students stormed the US embassy in Tehran and took over 50 hostages.
An incredibly embarrassing situation for the United States to have these hostages that they couldn't free and could do nothing for.
For months, President Carter tried everything to get the hostages released. As he failed on the diplomatic front, his popularity plummeted.
Since mid-November, we and the Iranian officials have been discussing with Secretary...
A military rescue mission to Iran in April 1980 failed. 8 American Marines were killed. Time was running short. Presidential elections were in November. President Carter's impotence to free the hostages played into the hands of his opponent. But Ronald Reagan suspected Carter had something up his sleeve.
Reagan's people really believed that Carter had a secret plan to free the hostages, that he was going to wait until October, the month before the election, to free the hostages, and this would then be the October surprise.
There's no evidence that Carter actually planned an October surprise. The hostages were not released, and Reagan won the election.
Well, there's never been a more humbling moment.
But conspiracy theorists think that Reagan's team did more than just take advantage of the stalemate in the hostage crisis. Some say they had even prolonged it.
The Reagan campaign negotiating illegally and independently with the Iranians not to release the hostages, but to hold the hostages until the election was over, thus ensuring Carter's defeat.
A second Christmas in captivity for the hostages came round.
Conspiracy theory, no hard facts. One thing is fact.
I, Ronald Reagan, do solemnly swear.
On the 20th of January 1981, within hours of Reagan's inauguration, news came from Tehran.
I had received word officially for the first time that the aircraft carrying the 52 American hostages had cleared Iranian airspace on the first leg of a journey home, and that every one of the 52 hostages was alive, was well, and free.
Whether Ronald Reagan used or prolonged the hostage crisis for his own ends is unclear. But one strange anomaly exists. The allegation wasn't investigated by the mainstream American media. Indeed, under Reagan, the citizens' distrust of politicians almost evaporated. But 2 years into President Reagan's second term, a scandal occurred that even Sonny Ronnie couldn't keep out of the press. Again, the United States' enemy number one, Iran, was at the heart of it. Pro-Iranian militants took several Western hostages in the mid-1980s. The hostage nightmare had come back to haunt Reagan. In November '86, a Lebanese magazine claimed that the Reagan administration had sold weapons to Iran in exchange for hostages. The president tried to play it down.
The only thing I know about major shipments of arms, as I've said, everything that we sold them could be put in one cargo plane and there would be plenty of room left over.
Do you think the American people would ever support weapons to the Ayatollah Khomeini?
We weren't giving them the Ayatollah Khomeini. It's a strange situation. As I say, we were dealing with individuals.
But a lot of American people just simply don't believe you.
It got worse. Not only was the administration selling weapons to Iran, the profits were funding Contras in Nicaragua, who were trying to destabilize the democratically elected Sandinista government.
They weren't supposed to be negotiating with the Iranians, certainly weren't supposed to be selling arms to Iran, which was on our list of terrorist countries. We're not supposed to be funding the Contras. Illegally obtained money was used to fight an illegal war. It was just completely illegal. I mean, that was a real conspiracy. And to me, that's a gigantic scandal, far bigger than, almost probably even bigger than Watergate in some ways.
With Watergate, there was a direct link to Nixon. With Iran-Contra, no such link to Reagan. But in July 1987, America was riveted to the TV screens to hear the testimony of Marine Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. He was the White House aide in charge of running the Iran-Contra scheme. The main question, did the president know?
I never personally discussed the use of the residuals or profits from the sale of U.S. weapons to Iran for the purpose of supporting the Nicaraguan resistance with the president.
Reagan escaped, but by a whisker. There was no resignation. For some conspiracy theorists, Ronald Reagan's narrow escape proved that he had powerful friends. Were they part of the octopus?
The people that make the covert connections to Khomeini's regime, people that actually sell them the arms and take the money back with them, these are the people who make up the octopus.
So why had the so-called octopus let Reagan survive? Some say his tough anti-communist stance was far more in line with their own agenda. And in another twist, conspiracy theorists claimed that another political figure became ensnared in the octopus.
Governor Clinton's office.
Shipments to the Contras left without hindrance from the home turf of future President Bill Clinton. Only very few think that Governor Clinton knew about it, but some do.
Bill Clinton was kept fully informed about it, and one of his key aides, his driver, went on 2 of the flights down to Nicaragua, parachuting weapons, on Bill Clinton's insistence.
Other researchers found flaws in the driver's statement, and only very few believe in this version of events.
I think given the huge battery of lenses and forensic scalpels that were deployed against Bill Clinton, if there'd been something really suspect or to hide about his times as governor and about Mina Airport, we'd know about it by now.
But this didn't stop conspiracy theorists spinning their own explanation of why Clinton could have got involved in Iran-Contra. Could this have brought Clinton closer to the presidency?
I remember during that election they had what they were called the 7 dwarfs. There were 7 different very viable candidates for the Democratic spot, and it goes to Clinton, the only one of all 7 who had this direct role in making sure that this particular aspect of the Iran-Contra thing never surfaced.
Before the book was closed on the Iran-Contra conspiracies, a final chapter was added. A Pulitzer Prize-winning reporter uncovered a link between the CIA, the Contras, and L.A. drug dealers. He was quickly dismissed as a conspiracy theorist.
What I had written was that these crack dealers in South Central L.A. were working with the Contras to finance the Contra War. What the spin was that I was alleging a conspiracy by the CIA to flood black neighborhoods with crack, which is never what the story said. But that was the tact the government and the media took to try to knock this down. And I found myself defending myself against things that I had never said.
Eventually, Webb's own paper withdrew the story, a move that was seen as confirming Webb's facts were flawed.
I was very disappointed, I was very discouraged, I was very angry, and I went public and I said, my editors are nuts, essentially.
But 2 years later, the CIA went public with some interesting facts. Gary Webb feels vindicated by the CIA report. But do the government and the media really actively conspire? Some extreme conspiracy theorists have certainly lost all trust of the media.
They are governed, bought, paid for, totally controlled. In fact, a lot of people had said about the LA Times, why don't you just rename it Pravda?
We get only the news that fits their agenda, and their agenda is world government.
And they think what we're doing is madness.
It took Gary Webb over 2 years to feel vindicated. Over 2 years in which he was written off as a conspiracy theorist. With the arrival of the internet, the hope of controlling the news agenda and discrediting journalists for years has become much more difficult. Bill Clinton's presidency felt the full effect of it.
What was once rumour is now spread instantly in a flash of a few seconds, and people like Matt Drudge.
My name is Matt Drudge.
His website.
I published the Drudge Report.
His website became crucial to making what would have taken months to trickle down happen in minutes.
there certainly is room for people who are just citizens to report and to have commentary.
Matt Drudge broke the Lewinsky story in January 1998. Within days, Hillary Clinton went on the offensive on U.S. television.
The great story here, for anybody willing to find it and write about it and explain it, is this vast right-wing conspiracy that has been conspiring against my husband since the day he announced for president.
Now, the use of the word conspiracy made a lot of people think she'd gone a bit nuts and that this was a hugely exaggerated claim. Actually, there really was a vast and right-wing group of people who were determined to remove him from office.
Part of this right-wing conspiracy, the story goes, took place before the Lewinsky affair became public. Clinton was under oath in a case of sexual harassment brought by a female employee from Arkansas. Clinton supporters say anti-Clinton lawyers set a trap for the president. They claim independent investigator Kenneth Starr was behind it. The name of an intern, Monica Lewinsky, was unexpectedly thrown at the president.
The blood drains from Clinton's face. He goes pale and panics, thinking, clearly, how on earth do they know about that? What the Clinton camp think happened is that Kenneth Starr's office got on the phone and said, look, we've heard that he had this fling with this woman, Monica Lewinsky. Ask him about it when you're asking about his pattern of behaviour with women employees. He'll be very surprised if he denies it. We'll have caught him in a perjury trap because he'll have lied under oath. And that's exactly what happened.
He could have got away with adultery and even with lying to the press.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman.
But he lied under oath, and Congress moved to impeach him. The Lewinsky story has generated its own raft of conspiracy theories.
I believe that that Monica Lewinsky was set up by elements of military intelligence that Ian Fleming belonged to, and that many people who are regarded as propagandists for the CIA or whatever belong to. So the Lewinsky matter can be seen as a military intelligence operation that only stopped after Bill Clinton agreed to refund the Star Wars program.
The story goes that Clinton was lukewarm about Reagan's Star Wars missile defense program. Did this mean he'd threatened the plans of the dreaded octopus? And then there's the death of White House Deputy Counsel Vince Foster.
Vince Foster was the absolute key element that the conspiracy theorists needed. You always need a good murder. It's like writing a thriller. You need a body and you need a death. And Vince Foster was that.
In 1993, the close friend and ally of the Clintons, who handled their personal business matters, was found dead in a Washington park, apparently a suicide.
The media accepted, as I did initially, the original verdict from the park police that it was a suicide, there's nothing to it. Subsequently, new things came to light, which should have caused them to be a bit more curious, at least. It's clear that the FBI played some part in orchestrating the cover-up, both at the very beginning, shortly after the death, and secondly in the subsequent investigation where they obstructed the prosecutor in charge of the case and wouldn't provide him with the documents he needed. They gave him a falsified photograph, and they were putting roadblocks in the way when he wanted to subpoena witnesses before the grand jury.
There has been, to my knowledge, not a death in the world that has been more investigated, more thoroughly, and worked over in more detail than the death of Vince Foster. And there have been three, count them, 3 investigations, and all 3 have found that there was nothing complex about this at all. It was tragic. A man ground down, decided to take his own life.
But reason or fact has absolutely no clout with extreme anti-Clinton conspiracy theorists.
Clinton is a rapist.
He is, of course, a drug user.
He's doing coke, in my opinion, to this very day. He's a liar.
Liar.
He's a thief.
Thief.
He is to America what Hitler was to Germany.
He is responsible for the death of over 30 people.
The man is guilty of high treason.
He can't be trusted with anything.
So Iran-Contra, that's a birthday party, darling.
That's right.
This is a Holocaust.
When the facts about the most powerful people in the world are kept from a skeptical public, outrageous conspiracy theories flourish. Rightly or wrongly, to conspiracy theorists, the reputation of US democracy, as personified by the president, is now in tatters.